Discuss the economic ideas of Mahatma Gandhi. How far are these ideas relevant today in Indian economy? Examine critically the contribution of Mahatma Gandhi in economic thought. His economic ideas. Mahatma Gandhi's economic ideas are based chiefly on four doctrines of life: truth, simplicity, non violence, and dignity of labor. To him, economics was simply a way of life, and hence, his economic ideas are merely a part of his general philosophy of life. One of the main principles which played an important role in his life was simple living and high thinking. His economic ideas, in brief, may be discussed as under the concept of economic system. To Gandhiji, an economic system is likely to provide the means by which the human and other methods of production may cooperate to produce and distribute the things and services in the whole society. There are three main economic systems which have been noticed so far in the world. They are capitalism, which is based on industries mainly, socialism, and mixed economy. Gandhiji did not accept any system out of these three and wanted to present another economic system, the so called service economy, based on the principle of self sufficiency. Economics of Charkha. The use of charkha in Gandhian economics has been given such much importance. To Gandhiji, the charkha or spinning wheel is not merely an instrument but an example of patience and self control to the common people, which provides them with self sufficiency by all means. Expressing his views under the title The Music of the Spinning Wheel, published in Young India in 1920, Gandhiji stated, I feel convinced that the revival of hand spinning and hand weaving will make the largest contribution to the economic and moral regeneration of India. The music of spinning wheel was sweeter and more profitable than that of harmonium. Gandhiji emphasized charkha because it requires a very modest capital, simple in operation, a good source of steady income to farmers, a perfect means to struggle against famines, a proper solution to the problem of rural unemployment, and is a good instrument for the promotion of equitable distribution of wealth and of economic welfare, particularly in the countryside. It is with this view that he advised Indian masses to solve their social and economic problems by using charkha and self-prepared khadi clothes. Village self-sufficiency. The main principle of Gandhian approach is to set up a system of village self-sufficiency. In this regard, the hypothesis of Mahatma Gandhi was the establishment of Gram Swaraj in the countryside, which means the complete independence of Indian villages. The goal of Gandhian planning was to make Indian villages fully independent. Mahatma Gandhi often used to say that the rural India was to be found in villages, not in cities and towns. In his hypothesis of Gram Swaraj, M.K. Gandhi explained that every village should produce all needed crops, food and non-food items. Each village should possibly produce its own goods, clothes, shoes and leather products, and similarly a village should have essential social amenities such as school, hospital, entertainment facilities and playground. Gandhiji Gandhiji's assumption was that India lives in villages and majority of its population depends on agriculture and is allied allied occupations. In case the Gram Swaraj is established, India would get naturally an economic freedom and would stand as an independent country in the world. Decentralization and industry. The decentralization of industry is an integral part of the Gandhian economics. Gandhiji felt that India had enough manpower but did not have sufficient capital with a view to absorbing the surplus manpower. He advised for adopting these methods of those methods of production which could absorb the surplus manpower. Gandhiji stated much of the deep poverty of masses is due to the ruinous departure from Swadeshi in the economic and industrial life. If not an article of commerce had been brought from England, she would be today a land flowing with milk and honey. Gandhiji was against the centralization of industry. He was of the view that the centralization of industries leads to the concentration of power in the few hands and promotes capitalism in the country, and therefore it should be avoided. In order to execute the idea of the decentralization industries, he was against the use of power and machines. As the result in the concentration of wealth and economic power, unemployment of masses and a reduction in the income of the workers, at least in the short period, he always gave importance to the dignity of labor and thus advised producers not to use machines unless it was essential because it might destroy the feeling of self-reliance in men. But was Gandhiji fully against the use of machines in process of production? No. Later on he realized that machinery was a good technique of production which saved time and reduced the cost production. On the question of the use of machine, Gandhiji stated my machinery must be of the most elementary type, which I can put in the homes of the millions. He further explained, the spinning wheel itself is a machine, a little toothpick is a machine. What I object to is the craze for labor saving machinery. I want to save time and labor not for a fraction of mankind but for all. Today, machinery merely helps a few to ride on the backs of millions. Mahatma Gandhi accepted or allowed those machines which were helpful to the human resources. He emphasized the use of machines in such a manner that they could not cripple the limbs of a man. Doctrine of trusteeship. While attacking capitalism, Gandhiji remarked that the capitalists who had acquired wealth were the thieves. He believed that the entire money did not belong to them. In fact, they got simply the right of honorable livelihood that was, in his opinion, no better than that enjoyed by millions of others. He would that the rest of the wealth belonged to the community and must be spent on its welfare. Mahatma Gandhi's concept of trusteeship was that all of social property should be held in trust. He wanted that all people, poor or capitalist, being trustees, should serve not only themselves but also the entire society. Mahatma Gandhi believed that trusteeship would help considerably in realizing a state of equality on earth. He thought that there was a need of equal distribution of wealth amongst the people of the country. If the idea was impracticable, he desired to implement equitable distribution of wealth. He recognized that in a capitalist economy, the concentration of power and wealth was, however, quite possible. He therefore concluded that the capitalist or the rich should be the trustees of the society. As the trustees, they should use for themselves a little of the resources as possible and should give away most of their resources for the benefit of the poor or for the improvement of the society. Gandhiji trusted that the trustees should use their talents not for themselves only but for the social structure as a whole. The doctrine of trusteeship does not allow any violence and bloodshed. Gandhiji stated that a violent and bloody revolution is certain one day unless there is a voluntary abdication of wealth, and power that riches give. Thus, he warned capitalists through his doctrine of trusteeship that if they do not work as trustees of the society, it will be done through a red revolution. Problem of food and population. Gandhiji had widely and his expressed his views on the occurrence of famines in the country and the impact thereof. He had seen the worst position in Bengal during the year 1943 to 44 when it was badly affected by the havoc of famine. He felt that there was a real shortage of food supply. He therefore suggested some measures to improve the conditions in India, such as curtailment of food requirements by each person to the minimum, wide cultivation program of food grains, etc. Economy in the consumption of food grains, check on black marketing, and restriction on the exports of food commodities. As regard the problems of population, he opposed those who advocated the use of contraceptives. He was in favor of birth control through self-control, brahmacharya, which was infallible sovereign remedy. He therefore emphasized sex education, the object of which might be to conquer the sex desire. Gandhiji criticized those who laid emphasis on birth control to solve the problem of food shortage. In this regard, he stated, in my opinion, by a proper land system, better agriculture, and a supplementary industry, this country is capable of supporting twice as many people as there are today. Dignity of labor. Mahatma Gandhi has emphasized on the welfare of the workers, their dignity and proper wages. To him, the employment of children was a national degradation. He advised that workers' hours of work should be reduced. More wages should be given and all safety measures should be taken in the factories. He advised harmony between labor and capital. According to him, capital should be labor's servant, not its master. Moreover, he supported labor unions and warned that if the rights of workers were not considered, they could go on strike, which should be based on non-violence and truth. In a nutshell, to understand and review the economic ideas of Mahatma Gandhi is not too easy in the little space available here, but it is believed that his economic ideas are as practicable today as they had been even before, particularly in finding out the real solution of the economic problems existing today in the countryside. Briefly discuss the Gandhian concept of sarvodaya. How could it be realized? Differentiate between Gandhian socialism and communism. The Gandhian economics is communism minus violence. Comment: Gandhian socialism and communism. It is usually stated that Mahatma Gandhi was a communist minus violence, and in comparison with socialist and communist, he was a better socialist or communist than they were. Gandhian socialism and communism, both philosophies, are greatly concerned with the poor, the oppressed, and the starving millions of people in the world. Both the philosophers, Gandhi and Karl Marx, wanted to establish such a society in which the poor people would be free from any sort of exploitation and would equally share the gifts of nature and fruits of labor. The only difference between the two is that Marx wanted to emphasize the force for the spread of socialism, but Gandhi was against any coercion and always supported non-violence. Besides this, Gandhian laid emphasis on the decentralization of power, wealth, and industry. Trusteeship, class duties, ethical and moral considerations. In positive terms, Gandhism is the method of progressing towards an ideal. On the contrary, Marxism suggested abolition of private property, dictatorship of the proletariat, nationalization of resources, regimentation of social life, and class war. Mahatma Gandhi was not convinced with the Russian type of communism. He therefore suggested that our socialism should be based on the non-violence and on the harmonious cooperation of capitalist workers, landlords, and tenants. Sarvodaya, the Gandhian socialism, an important topic in economics as in thought of Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi used the word sarvodaya to denote Gandhian socialism, which might become the foundation of Indian socialism. Sarvodaya refers to the welfare of all in the society, whether they are poor or rich. More specifically, the Sarvodaya as seen by Mahatma Gandhi is not merely a movement, but it is a philosophy of life which powerfully affected the ideas of many eminent persons of the country, like Vinoba Bhave, Professor J.K. Mehta, Sri J.B. Kriplani, and so on. The Bhudan, Gramdan, and allied movements were affected by the Sarvodaya movement. The Sarvodaya movement is virtually a mixed form of spiritual and materialistic thoughts. This philosophy spotlighted the fact that the simple living with minimum needs is better than the way of a modern life based on Western culture. The simplicity is a symbol of happiness, whereas the modern life brings a lot of discontentment, complexities, and unhappiness. It emphasizes the fact that the materialistic approach is not merely enough for the happiness of the humanity, but it should also be supported by the spiritual and intellectual progress. Professor D.S. Dubey, in this context, once stated, Sarvodaya is a harmonious combination of spiritualism and materialism and brings about both material and moral progress simultaneously. It has got all the advantages of socialism, but it avoids nationalization of industries and concentration of economic power in the hands of a few persons, and it gives the utmost freedom of thought to every individual. Basic doctrines of Sarvodaya. In a nutshell, the basic doctrines of Sarvodaya are: a person belonging to Sarvodaya Samaj is expected to be non-violent both in his thought and practice. Its members life should have led a simple life and should minimize his wants. Third, the members should earn their living by labor and should work freely for the welfare of the society. Fourth, the member should consider himself to be the trustee of the property which should be used for the benefit of the society. Fifth, there should be decentralization of power and wealth in a few hands. 6. Since Sarvodaya economy is a self-generating one, it should have intensive, small-scale, individual and diversified agriculture merely through cooperative efforts and mechanization, and use of power should be avoided. 7. The cottage crafts based on agriculture should be promoted. 8. The movement accepts only a cattle-based economy. And 9th, not the least, the animal, human, and plant life should be protected against the maximization of machinery. Program to realize Sarvodaya. As regards the realization of Sarvodaya, Mahatma Gandhi assumed that Sarvodaya Samaj should be established, followed by Sarvodaya democracy. The main objective of such a society would be to establish real Swaraj in which sickness, disease, and illiteracy would be minimized. The Sarvodaya state would be a secular state and would not hurt another nation. It would establish cordial relations between labor and capital and would always resist evil things. This work will be done by the numerous workers of Sarvodaya Samaj who would go out to the poor classes and try to change their socio-economic conditions. It is with this view we come to the conclusion that Gandhian philosophy, however, may be proved merely an utopian approach which cannot be although fully real at the macro level, but India may still find her solution of the problem of unemployment, poverty, and growing economic disparities, especially in the countryside. However, we have to review the whole Gandhian philosophy, taking an overall view of present Indian conditions and place its main doctrines in our national planning in a broader sense. These were the three questions which I had read from the book Naren's History of Economic Thought by U.C. Kulshrestha, Lakshmi Naren Agrawal.